welcome everybody to our joint user/developer meeting hosted by the Mifos Initiative. Hosting the meeting today will be myself, and then Adi is going to be presenting and leading a tutorial. He's going to be showcasing, or not showcasing, but just giving some updates on the work that the core team has been taking on to help release our first Apache compliant release of Fineract, and then also doing a brief tutorial just to help new contributors get up to speed on getting a build up and running. So the agenda we're looking to cover today is as follows. We just got through a round of introductions, and then Adi is going to go over the points of work that the team's been working on the Fineract transition. And then I'll give a few updates on the GSOC projects and when those will be shipped to the community. Then Adi will move into the development tutorial. So we got through our introductions, and then I'll pass it over to Adi in just a moment. But as you know, we applied to become, or we were invited to become an Apache project almost 10 months ago now, and so we've been in incubation much longer than we anticipated, and a lot of that's due to some of the components we had within the platform that weren't compatible with the Apache licenses. And we tried to identify ways in which we could, build the software and still keep Hibernate within the platform. But at the end of the day, we had to basically remove it and replace it with another library. And so that's what's taken all the time. So Adi and the team have gotten a fix in place. They're going to go over what those fixes have been. And then soon we'll hopefully be able to make, our first Apache compliant release. And then once we have that in place, the next major milestone we need to meet towards graduating to a top-level Apache project is continuing to engage the community. And the community has been doing a great job of asking questions and participating on the mailing list. So we're looking forward to more of that collaboration. So I'll pass it over to Adi, who will give an update on what the core team worked on regarding OpenJPA and why we've had a code freeze over the past couple weeks. And then once Adi's done with that, I'll give some updates just on what development we'll have coming from the core team over the next couple months and where we need volunteers and partners to help with as well. So let me just pass the controls over to Adi. Okay, I can see your screen now, Adi. So.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks, Ian, for the introduction. As part of the Apache Fineract release, we had been working for the last 6 months, and OpenJPA integration is the final hurdle that probably we have to cross as of now. So I'll just brief you. OpenJPA integration is what we are working for the last 3 weeks, and we are completely focused on this one particular task. I'll tell you what are the challenges that we have faced and what are the kind of changes that we are doing, so that the whole community is aware of it. Okay. So Nazir was not able to be part of this meeting, so on behalf of him, I'll acknowledge his effort in this. So first thing is what is JPA? I think just for the sake of the user community who might be part of this, who might not be completely development oriented, I'll just give a very quick introduction of JPA. JPA is Java Persistence APIs. This is an open spec which basically tells how a persistence framework has to work. Okay, it's basically a just a specification, and it doesn't give any implementations. Now, Hibernate, there are so many implementations of this OpenJPA spec, JPA spec. Hibernate is OpenJPA, Eclipse Link, and so many others are there. Now, Hibernate is the old and grand player in this segment. I think everybody mainly works on Hibernate. So Hibernate is the most mature implementation of all, but we can't take away credit of any other implementations as well. Okay, so Fineract or Mifos X as it is, it was developed using Hibernate as the JPA provider. So all the code has been written and tested based on the Hibernate as a JPA provider. So why we need to move to OpenJPA? Hibernate is a LJPL license, which will not allow us to be part of the Apache compliant release. Okay, so to be able to meet the licensing requirements, OpenJPA is an Apache implementation itself, and it has the same Apache license. So we are actually trying to move to the OpenJPA JPA provider. Now, basically, what are the main differentiators? In our experience, what I can say is JPA is a very vague or very open spec. Okay, it just gives guidelines in many of the cases. For example, as simple as even when you say like lazy loading, JPA just tells you like, okay, the implementer can do like this, can do like this also. Meaning like, let's say there is a one-to-one relation, and you apply a lazy loading constraint on that particular annotation, one particular one-to-one relation. So OpenJPA, JPA spec as such says like the implementer can do a join and then fetch it immediately, or he can delay the lazy till a further point of time. So each implementer actually handles all these annotations in a slightly different way. So the way they create the queries when creating the entities, all those things are pretty different from each and every implementation. So in this case, in this sense, we have faced a lot of issues when we were moving to OpenJPA. So when you are moving to OpenJPA, it just means like you are switching your entity managers and the provider basically. So how do you go about it? The first thing is you change your persistence.xml. So here the main thing is like the persistence provider was Hibernate earlier. Now this will be changed as OpenJPA persistence provider. Okay. Now we have added so many other properties. For example, here MySQL dictionary, custom dictionary we have added. I'll come and explain like what are these really why we need these properties. Then entity manager as an XML infrastructure.xml has an entity manager bin creation entry. So this will now change to OpenJPA specific vendor adapter. Okay. Once these are done, then you're pretty much you'll start with facing the challenges which you never used to have earlier. So the first and foremost is entity enhancement. Entity enhancement means all the entity objects which are like the relations, the mappings to your actual database tables. These entities, they are always enhanced before actually used by any JPA provider. Okay, so enhance means they will actually change the bytecode of the class what you write based on annotations and other things, and then they add their own code to be able to manage track the object, whether it is becoming dirty or not, whether it is lazy. If it is lazy, how do you manage it? If there is an insertion into a collection object, okay, one-to-many relations, tracking those objects so that like you can save it later, those kind of things. So all the providers actually do this enhancement. Now there are two kinds of enhancement. One is build time enhancement, where like your bytecode is changed and then directly made part of the WAR file. The second is runtime enhancement. Hibernate is very good in doing that runtime enhancement. We did face a lot of issues in OpenJPA. Runtime enhancement was not working for us, so we had to do some change in the Gradle build script to be able to do this runtime enhancement so that the entities are recognized properly. Okay, so this is the first and foremost challenge, because we followed so many tutorials or steps as part of enhancement process, but we failed many times and we had to redo and then figure out the missing places and other things, and then we were finally able to get this enhancement, entity enhancement working. So this was the first step and the first hurdle. Once this starts, then everything starts from like making your code compliant with OpenJPA. Okay. So the second hurdle was all the entity objects. They were all enhanced from the base class, which is Spring JPA based abstract persistable. Okay. The thing here is Spring framework by default provides an enhanced class of this abstract persistable. So, and that is enhanced only with respect to Hibernate. So, for OpenJPA, this class we will not be able to, we will not get a readily enhanced class. So, because of that reason, what we have done now is we have created our own abstract persistable custom class, which is more or less exactly the same code as a Spring framework, with some changes, which again we will see later. And now all the entity classes are actually extending from our own abstract persistable custom. Okay. So this is the next change, because like runtime enhancement is not working out for us. Okay. Now the next thing is like entity definitions. In the entity definitions, when you create a variable which is referencing to a particular column in a particular table. So in Hibernate, even if the variables were declared as final, it was able to manage it. But in case of OpenJPA, the enhancement of final variables doesn't happen. It just ignores all those final variables. So because of this, you will actually lose the persistence mechanism in the first place. Okay, so it will not even try to persist that particular field. So this will create so many issues. So the thing is like we should not be using final variables for any of the entity fields. Okay, so that's one more thing which we had to scan and remove all of them. Then in some of our entities, we have done custom implementation of equals, hash code, and toString methods. Now, somehow Hibernate never bothered about all these methods and how it is using. But in case of OpenJPA, when it is a cascaded transaction, meaning like you are trying to save your child entities and all, these methods actually started giving us problems. Okay, so before saving, the ID is actually null, and then OpenJPA actually tries to use these equals method and other things, then finally ends up actually saving multiple copies of it. Okay, so finally we had to figure out and then say like hash code, equals, and toString. These specific methods are nowhere used as part of the entity objects. So one way, these are the changes that we have done. In another way of looking at this, presentation is like, if you are developing in the future, you should avoid using these kind of pitfalls. Okay. So coming to the next one, MySQL as a dictionary, it is already by default provided by OpenJPA. Now here, what is this dictionary? This dictionary class, this is what varies for different database providers like Oracle or MySQL or MS SQL. So it gives those variations like whether it selects a subselect is allowed, whether aliases are allowed. So there are so many parameters. There are like hundreds of parameters. Now within these, the default MySQL dictionary of OpenJPA, it was having some problems according to the code that we have written. So as I mentioned, the whole code was written keeping Hibernate as the JPA provider, but when we came to OpenJPA, the default values that it uses changed. So the very simple thing like subselect queries, meaning like you say like select x dot star from, you use a select query. Okay, select that from this or whatever it is. Now these queries will not work with the default MySQL dictionary. Okay, so what we have done is like we have changed the properties of we have come up with our own MySQL dictionary custom, which actually overrides and then corrects these parameters according to our existing implementation. Okay, so Some of them are like Boolean representation. By default, Boolean representation is 0 and 1 in MySQL dictionary, MySQL default dictionary. But in all our code, we are using based on Boolean directly. We are reading it as Boolean variable. So the conversion itself used to fail. So we have changed this particular Boolean representation property as part of our custom dictionary. So allowing alias in bulk clause, using wildcard for count. For example, if you have, we had so many places where we have written select count star from this. Even that kind of query will not work unless this particular property is actually true. Okay, so we have mentioned the basic important ones, but if you actually go through the MySQL dictionary custom, you will figure out like there are some more which are modified to suit our implementation. Okay, then JDBC template is what we use as part of our CQRS pattern. Like to read all of the data, we don't use actually entity, JPA providers. We directly fire queries using JDBC template. But one strange thing was like with OpenJPA, there is a connection parameter called auto commit, which was coming as false, because of which successive reads were giving inconsistent results. Even a SQL query as simple as like select star from loan, it used to give a very different results. Now when we see in Hibernate, this auto commit is actually true. So once we force the auto commit property to be true in our connection creation, we start seeing like consistent results are returned. Okay, so even read APIs were affected because of this migration. So it took a lot of time for us to actually figure this out and then fix it. So next is JPQL queries. So here there are very subtle nuances. In case of when you are writing in our repository classes, Spring repository classes, we use JPQL queries. There Hibernate allows simple statements like from loan where loan ID equal to something. Okay, but in case of OpenJPA, it is more strict in the syntax and other things. So you have to have select as the first word. So you have to say like select loan from loan where loan ID equal to this. So and Boolean values also. We have so many Boolean variables. We use bit as part of our database definition, and they are converted as Boolean, read as Boolean values in our queries and other things. So we had so many queries where we used to have where condition comparisons based on 1 and 0. In case of JPQL, it doesn't. At least in case of OpenJPA, it doesn't recognize these things. So we had to make sure like we are passing true and false, and then even the return parameter by default Boolean, it was not passing Boolean, it was passing integer. So we had to do some tweakings to actually get the values and the existing implementation working. Issue with column definition mismatch. Now here again, for some reason, Hibernate doesn't care about whether a field is marked as nullable and whether it is exactly the same as what is the definition in your DB tables. But in case of OpenJPA, it is very strict in the sense like if it is nullable field in DB, it should be marked nullable here. If it is not nullable, then it has to be not nullable. So those kind of issues, we had a huge mismatches like this. So we had to scan and then correct all those things. Okay. Then we had some more issues like see, though when you're constructing a for example loan entity object, finally be it any JPA providers, they actually convert it into a SQL query and then they fire a query on the database, get it and populate it back into the Java entity, and then give it back to you. Now, the way these different JPA providers construct this query, select query itself is so different. In Hibernate, we were not facing the 61 joins issue, but in OpenJPA, we started facing this 61 joins issue. So we had to make a lot more relations lazy loaded, so that like we get inside that 61 joins. So this is one more very important thing for every developer to know. Going forward, we should be really careful in the way we are actually adding relations into the entity objects. Okay, some of the entity loading was taking too much time. Just the way I explained, the way the queries are constructed, it's different in Hibernate and OpenJPA. In case of OpenJPA, we saw like it was taking way too much in creating some of the hierarchical relationships like officers or client and loan. Especially in case of officers, earlier we used to load the whole hierarchy. Even if you try to create one entity of one office, it used to create the whole hierarchy because it had both the parent and child relation as part of the eager loading. So it was a chain reaction which used to happen, and then it used to load all offices no matter which office you wanted to actually use. So we actually corrected that to be lazy loaded based on the scenario, so that only the required office and the required relations are loaded. Okay. So this cascaded delete was not working. So this is one problem which took actually really lot of time for us to figure out. Cascade all is a property in JPA spec itself. So if you delete your parent entity, it is expected to delete all your child entities which are marked as like cascade all. So strangely in OpenJPA, what used to happen was it used to send the query to delete the parent entity first, and then it used to try send the queries to delete queries to delete the child entities. Now what happens is like because there is a foreign constraint, foreign key relationship constraint on the child entities, the first delete itself used to fail. It says like, okay, I can't. There are child entities, I can't delete the parent entity. So getting this order of deletes proper itself was the only change we had to make finally was property, add one more property as part of the persistence XML, where like you just say like foreign key delete action equal to cascade. But figuring out this one particular line actually took us a lot of days. Even we were in touch with OpenJPA forum itself. We were discussing with them, but we never got anything directly. Finally, so many ad hoc trial and error and so many things, we finally figured out, okay, this works. Okay, so now we don't think we have any more issues with respect to cascade delete. Now, in the same way, we have issues with repository save also. So in Hibernate, when you call an entity, let's say like a parent entity, you say entity repository dot save of loan. Automatically, it used to save all the child entities, and on this, it used to even assign the expected foreign key ID and primary key IDs of the transactions and other things. But in case of OpenJPA, unless until you use save and flush, it won't assign IDs to the child entities. Okay, or for that matter, any primary key ID will not be generated until you use save and flush. Now, this is a major issue for us because, like in all our cases, in Hibernate at least, it used to directly generate on calling of save itself. So we used to start further processing based on those primary key IDs, like posting journal entries and other things. Now we had to figure out and then use save and flush wherever it is really required for further processing. Okay. So this pretty much what we had to change. But the problem I would say is like the help that you would get from Google with respect to OpenJPA is quite minimal. The documentations are there, but it is just uh, too narrow documentation is there. So it's not very easy and intuitive to figure out the solutions. Okay, so I think like this made us take more time on each and everything. Changing the code left and right was not an option for us because it's just too huge a code base. So we had to spend time to figure out like all these solutions. So that's what we had to face as challenges. Now, as a Q&A, we have our own simple things which frequently asked. Is there any performance degradation? Till now, we have done manual QC on this, and at least the perception or the QA perception is like it is, if not worse, uh, if not better, it's not worse. Okay, so we see like the response is better, but we will be doing some specific test case executions with some load testings to see to capture the actual performance in more metrics oriented way. Okay, and what is the benefit of moving to OpenJPA in Fineract? This is the only way for us to be able to make a Fineract release. Without this, we are not able to proceed because of the license restrictions. Also, what we see is like OpenJPA is more strict in terms of enforcing the rules of JPA. So maybe the developers will also be more disciplined in the way they write the entity objects and all other relationships. Okay, so if you want to, can I revert back to Hibernate, if at all, for whatever reason? Yes, you can revert back to Hibernate. What core team has done is mainly around the properties and some of the not so important things around the Hibernate. All the things we have done, they also work with Hibernate. For example, whether a variable is marked as final or not, it doesn't matter for Hibernate. Whether you have select as part of your JPQL, it doesn't matter. But only one thing you have to do, you have to basically revert back to the original persistence.xml, revert back to original infrastructure.xml, revert back to original Gradle because that's where the dependencies on the Hibernate are defined, and you get the proper jars. And then finally, in Gradle, you will have to make sure like MySQL dictionary custom class that we have written, that one class will not be compiled as part of your code base. I think if you do this, you should be able to run the same code with Hibernate as well. Okay, that's it from my side. So floor is open for Q&A if you have any more questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Adi. That was very helpful to have that detailed overview. Hopefully we can share it later on with the other, members of the Apache Foundation and maybe do like a case study on, the learnings we made, and hopefully, if we get a compliant release, just show like what it took to get there, as I think these learnings are very critical. And this was a very, helpful overview, especially the last part, on what developers need to bear in mind if they move forward with OpenJPA or they want to continue working with Hibernate. So I want to open the floor to any questions you might have around what Adi just presented on. Daniel, did you have a question? Okay, well, if there's no questions on this, we'll continue with the agenda, and then I'll pass it back over to Adi shortly, who's going to give a brief dev tutorial. So thank you so much, Adi. And then just one question I had. So, like for those developers that do want to switch the library to Hibernate, they just need to, do they need to do anything, or just take, what will be in the Fineract release and move forward with that? So. Oh, you might still be on mute, Adi, but you can cover that question later on. So.
OpenJPA, if they want to continue with OpenJPA, they don't have to do any changes. But if they want to revert back to Hibernate, just as I said, they have to just revert back to few files which we have modified.
Okay,
We'll
and
put
if
this
they
as
have,
a
sorry,
we'll
go on,
put
Adi.
this as an article on Mifos, because like anyways that will be more important from Mifos point of view, not from a Fineract point of view. Fineract point of view, we will not be making any suggestions of going back to Hibernate.
Okay, and then if they have their own system built, like they would need to make the same changes to the various XML files you had mentioned, and then they also, if they have any of the challenges you face, they would need to change that in their code base as well. So
Yeah, they would have to do on their own. Yeah.
okay,
Most of
okay, well,
the code we would have covered from the Fineract, and they might be able to cherry pick, but they still have like a lot more custom code. If at all they have, I think they will have to follow the same instructions what we have given here and then take it forward.
okay. Thank you, Adi. So I'll go back to the remaining slides I have to present, and then I'll make you presenter once again in a moment, Adi. So I'll take back the presentation. Okay, and apologies for the background noise. I'm in a coffee shop right now, so hopefully it's not too loud. So just as a reminder, for everybody to get engaged with the Fineract community, if you haven't already, subscribe to the mailing list. And if you find, bugs in the platform or you have new features you want to request, use the Fineract issue tracker. And so in terms of development, apologies for the typo up there. Now that the team is wrapping up the OpenJPA work, they're going to take up some work on the statement of work once again. And so Nazir, Adi, and the rest of the core team, they're working on implementing the SMS campaigns module, and that work is underway right now. And then there's also ongoing enhancements to the data import tool, but we could use more inputs from partners and volunteers there as well. And then we are going to be extending the data tables to be more of a workflows module, but the core team is going to take on the back-end work for that, and we would like to identify a partner or volunteer who could potentially work on some of the front-end work. So that's another project we have available. And then we'll just be shipping a minor enhancement around making the role-based dashboards work once we have some of the default roles in place on Mifos. So this will be the focus of the core team over the next couple months. And then just wanted to briefly look at some of the ongoing volunteer or partner projects we need assistance with. So on the partner side, we're still looking for a partner who could take on doing some of the ad hoc reporting integration that we wanted to build out. So we had an intern and a partner working on that previously, and would like someone to pick that up. And then on the volunteer side, we still have a number of enhancements we want to make to the community app or our web UI. So we're always looking for volunteers on that front. We are going to have a team from SanDisk who might pick up some work on the two-factor authentication, but we could still augment that with the contributions of other volunteers too. And then some of our partners are helping to extend the back-end surveys framework we have, and we need more of a UI for that. So looking volunteers there as well. And then in a similar vein, we still need some help in getting more of the PPI XML surveys uploaded into the platform. And then once again on UI, we want to implement some wizard interfaces for both product and account creation. So continuing to seek volunteers there. And then a key area where we need some volunteers is getting the Mifos Stellar integration into production. So we are looking to pilot that in Cameroon and hopefully Kenya as well. And we have the back-end work in place, but need some individuals who can work with both the API as well as build out the front-end UI screens to make that money transfer integration a reality. And then we've got a collateral management module that's in progress, but could use additional help there. And then we also, are hoping to engage a volunteer to work with more of a lightweight business rules or data-driven authorization tool. And then I'll go over, some of the reference and self-service apps in the next slide. So. So as you saw from the previous showcase, we wrapped up Google Summer of Code and they showcased their work, and now we're just readying all of this great innovation so it can be shared with the rest of the community. So in terms of the work that Adian did on a notifications module, that'll be shipping very soon. We're just waiting for the revamped community app that Duplex worked on to be shipped, and then Adian's work can ship as well. And then Rajan's been hard at work on doing some final QA and building out some remaining features on the Android Field Operations app, but we're hoping to have that shipped by the end of October. And then likewise, the redesigned and reskinned and refactored community app worked on by Duplex, we're looking to ship that by the end of the month. And we could, utilize the community's help in providing some QA and identifying any bugs. So if you'd like to do any of that testing, you can access the beta server. So it's demo.openmf.org/beta, and the same credentials as usual. And that link will be in the presentation when we share that. And then we also, have Mohit's work on browser-based offline access, and he can provide more details on the issues faced there. But we're trying to enable, offline data entry to occur, and with some of the components he's working with, he's blocked. So once we get unblocked and have resolutions to that, we'll work on shipping the module that he worked on. And then with the mobile money integration that Daniel worked on in Cameroon, he's been doing some additional refactoring that's come up after it was piloted. So once that refactoring's in place, we'll also ship that. And then Nikhil is, taking up the final work on the credit bureau integration module. And then we've got a strong team of volunteers and product managers working on the Android self-service app. And if you're interested in helping there, we welcome your contributions. So folks like Puneet, who are on this call today, are assisting, along with Rajan and Vishwajit's continuing to work on it too. So that was a quick, brief rundown of what there is available in the community for partners and volunteers to work on. So if you see anything that aligns with the skill sets you have and something that your customers might need, reach out to me or send a message on the mailing list, and we'd love to get you working on any of these projects. So I want to make sure, Adi can go through his dev tutorial. So I'm going to pass the controls back over to him, and then let him go through that. And then, I know we're getting to the end of the hour, but if everybody can stay on for the full tutorial, that'd be great. So Adi, I'll make you the presenter and let you get started.
Okay, can you see the screen that I have shared?
Yeah, I can see your screen now, Adi.
Okay, I'll be using the same presentation which I had used for the developer conference. So basically, installing a Mifos code, it basically involves two things. One, setting up your platform server, which is nothing but our incubator Fineract, and then setting up the UI sample app to consume the APIs, which is your community app as an example. So how do you set or install or get the platform server running? Okay, the prerequisites are Java 8, Tomcat, and MySQL 5.5. Here, I think people should make sure like these versions are, you have to stick to these versions, because the higher versions we have not tested, and we see like there are some problems. In the community, we have had so many queries about like why it is not working, why it is not working. But if you stick to these exact same versions, I'm sure like it will work like a breeze without any problem. Okay, GitHub account. If you want to take the code, you will need the GitHub account. And general practice is like if you want to develop and then contribute to the community, you will start from forking the Apache Incubator Fineract to your GitHub account, and then clone that, make the changes, create PR from there, and then contribute back. Okay. So first thing is like you fork and then you actually clone the repository to your local. So assuming like you have you are cloning to C Fineract as your directory, you can directly clone that. Then the next step is like you want to set up the database. Here, when you have installed MySQL 5.1, make sure like your root password you have kept it as MySQL, so that like the default instructions actually work. Okay. So you log into this and just create two databases, one by the name Mifos Platform Tenants and another by the name Mifos Tenant Default. Okay. So with these two steps, you're pretty much set with what you want to do. Prepare DB schema you can always skip, no need to do that. But it is something to help you help your boot up faster, but that's not something that is important. So you ignore that. Now at this point, you have 2-3 ways of looking at this deployment. Okay, one, you want to create your own war file and then deploy, okay, into a Tomcat server, or Mifos itself actually provides the war file for each and every release. Directly you want to just use that war file, you don't want to make any kind of modification, you can actually download that war file from the SourceForge link that we share as part of each and every release. And the third is you want to actually work as a developer, so you don't want to actually go through this hassle of war file for each and every step of your development. So these are the 3 silos of how you will actually use this. Okay, so the easiest is you actually download the ready war file from the Mifos release and then directly skip to the deploy step. Or if you want to create your own war file, you just need to go to Fineract provider as the folder as part of your cloned repository and just run this command gradle clean var. Now a Fineract platform.var file will be created in this particular folder, build libs folder. Okay, just take that war file, you have installed your Tomcat. In the Tomcat, you just need to add this drizzle driver in the lib folder of the Tomcat. You have to make one entry of JNDI as part of the Mifos platform tenants in the server.xml. The XML that you have to add is here as part of the comments here. So here you're trying to provide the driver name and the URL for the platform, okay, and the username password for your database. So this is your default step. Okay, so if you add this as part of your server.xml and copy the war file that you created or you have directly downloaded from SourceForge, just copy that to the web apps folder, start the Tomcat server using your default startup script based on the environment. If it is a Windows environment, you will have a startup.bat. If it is a Linux environment, it will be just a startup.sh. Okay, if you just start this, your server will automatically start and it will start running automatically. Okay, they're the only steps and the foolproof steps. Okay, I have actually tried these steps so many times. Very simple and very straightforward steps. You don't have to do too many different things. Now, preparing DB schema. What this step is, we keep on each and every release, we keep enhancing and modifying the database schema. So they come as different versions. This, depending on if you don't run this step as part of your server bootup for the first time, it will actually take those version files. We have up to 320 versions right now. So it will read each SQL version by version and then it will actually update the database. Now, if you run this gradle migrate tenant list DB, it will actually run all those things in one shot. Okay, and then when you actually start up your Tomcat server, it will take lesser time to boot. Actually, that's the only difference. Otherwise, what happens at the end of it is still the same. Okay, so this is what you just have to do for deploying. But if it is development environment that you are really interested, all you have to do is from Fineract provider, instead of Gradle var, you just run this command Gradle w clean tomcat run var. Now what happens here is you don't have to do create var file step, you don't have to do deploy step. All you have to do is fetch the source code, set up the database with empty Mifos platform tenants database, Mifos tenant default database, and all the remaining things will be automatically taken care by this command. Okay, Gradle clean tomcat run var. So the thing is, only till the session of your command prompt, you will be running this from the command prompt. Till your command prompt is up and running, you will have the server. If you close this, it will go away. So that's the only difference. So the Tomcat is something that is automatically inbuilt in the Spring Boot part. So it will download and then it will internally it will do all the deployments, all the steps, whatever we have done earlier, it will automatically do it. So this is important. This is useful for the development oriented people. Okay. So for any more details, you can always go to all these steps. There is a message. Yeah, this will be shared anyways by Ed. I'll share this with everybody who is available on the meeting today. Okay, this is all simple basic steps that you have to take care to actually be able to run and install server. Okay, with the server, you're basically up and running with the platform API. You can hit the APIs either through community app or Android app or any other application. Okay. Now, for you, in this case, the URL will be localhost :8443 / the whole Fineract provider version 1. Okay, that's all you would need. Now, to install or to test this as a sample application, if you want to install community app as well, the instructions are clearly mentioned as part of the GitHub repository. If you go to community app, all you need to do is first install your npm, fork this project, have a clone of this project in your local, install, make sure like you have installed npm. Then you just go to navigate to that forked repository. Then you just run install bower as a global argument, global package. Run CLI as global package. Run bower install. Run npm install. Run grunt serve, and then automatically your browser will also open with the default URL. Now, when you run this, so here I'm doing this. So by default, when you run this grunt serve, it opens with a link to the platform server. By default, it chooses demo openmf.org. Now all you have to do is, let me check if, okay, my local server is not there, not running as of now. I'll just quickly fire it up. So remove this part of OpenMF. Just type in your local address, localhost 8443. Okay, let me just copy paste from. Okay, this is the URL which actually points to your installation, and the variable here, the parameter here, tenant identifier default, this actually identifies the default tenant as part of your local installation. So if you add this, you would actually be able to run your application, okay, locally. Now, only one thing here is when you do this, you will get into cross origin issue. All you have to do is copy this same URL, okay, and run it directly once. Now it will actually ask you to provide a resolve the, okay, sorry, it's not up. So it will ask you to add it as part of your exception list. Once it is added as part of your exception list, this will automatically start taking the cross origin request as well, okay. So this is the only step that you have to do to make sure like it works with your. Sorry, it will take a lot more time. I'm on the OpenJPA, so the build environment, it has to do the enhancement and other so many other things, so it will take some time. Any questions here?
Adi,
Yeah,
Nikhil here.
Sorry?
Go right ahead,
Are
Nick.
you able to hear me? Yeah. Adi, previously we used to use pbuild type equal to test. Now there is no requirement to use it, right?
Okay, pbuild type test equal to test. It was added as part of our previous effort to make a OpenJPA, incubator Fineract release. What we tried was without OpenJPA, we said like the build will not use Hibernate, but only for integration testing we will use it. So war file is not supposed to include your Hibernate dependencies as well. So to do that differentiation, we used to actually use that pbuild type equal to test. Now till we make this new release, which we are, I could say like it will not be more than next week. So once till we get the release out as part of the Fineract, you will still have to use that particular attribute. But once we get this OpenJPA integration out, you will not need that particular parameter anymore.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Okay, well, thank you so much, Adi, for that tutorial as well. And if you can send me the two presentations you have, Adi, I'll send those along when I send out the link to the recording, as well as the notes and presentation for the developer meeting. So, yeah, I'll quickly, I know we're over time, but I want to make sure if there are any questions from the floor, we cover those. But before we move to that, just a reminder that our next upcoming webinar is October 27th, and we're going to have Alexandra and her colleague present some of the learnings and findings from their human-centered design research on building smartphone interfaces for mobile money. So it'll be a pleasure having them present to us. So if you haven't registered yet, please make sure you try to do so. That'll be on Thursday, the 27th at 1500 GMT, so a little bit later than our start time today. So on that note, I'll just see if there are any questions, and then thank you everybody for joining. It was nice to have a well-attended developer call, and then we'll continue to try and utilize these developer calls to have the core team showcase tutorials and give guidance to other community members. And then for the user meetups, we want to get back in the swing of having partners and users give case studies on their experiences implementing Mifos. So I'll be in touch with a number of partners, but if you're interested in doing a case study or showcasing some of your work during a future meeting, let me know. Okay, so are there any questions that anybody has? Okay, well, if there are no questions from anybody, thank you all once again for attending. Like, as you probably noticed, we've been more active on the community blog, providing updates there. So we're going to try and use that to regularly highlight our top contributors, our top partners, and do case studies on users and solutions powered by Mifos. So if you're interested in being part of any of those features, reach out to me. And then we're also getting more happening locally with our networks of Mifos chapters. And we'll be doing a blog post and sending out some links to help register or get listed in some of our collaboration tools there. So we've got a lot happening in our growing community, and then we'll be keeping you abreast of all that. So thank you once again. Take care.
Thank you, Ed.